He lost the light and found only silence. When his vision returned, the first clear face he saw wasn't his perfect fiancée's. It was the woman who kept his home in order, with steady hands and the voice that guided him through the dark. Color-coded folders, rounded letters, and a trail that never quite matched the glory of the elite. What do you do when you finally see the one who was always there and realize your entire world was built on her silence? Before you hear this moving story, subscribe to our channel to receive heartwarming stories every day. Ethan Thorne awoke every morning at 6:30, but he no longer knew if it was day or night. The light that once streamed through his bedroom window, piercing the Belgian linen curtains and painting golden stripes across the pale hardwood floor, was now merely a memory he revisited like one might trace the edges of an old photograph. The diabetes, which he had neglected for years amidst business trips to Miami, meetings in Washington, D.C., and endless investor dinners along the Magnificent Mile, had finally extracted its toll. The complications arrived swiftly, insidiously, and within 3 months, his sight had extinguished like a lamp flickering before its final demise. His penthouse in River North, that glass and concrete structure he himself had designed at 30, back when Thorne Development Group was still a burgeoning promise rather than an established empire, had transformed into unfamiliar territory. Ethan knew every square foot of that space. He knew where the hallway light switch was, how many steps separated the living room from the indoor garden, the specific creak of the pantry door. Yet now he had to relearn everything by touch, by sound, by the aroma of the coffee his cook prepared at 7 each morning. His doctor, Dr. Alan Reed, a man with a deep, deliberate voice who smelled of antiseptic and bitter coffee, had stated there was a chance to reverse the condition. A surgery, he explained, might restore his vision. But first, his blood sugar needed to be controlled, his body stabilized, the groundwork laid. There were no guarantees, only possibilities. Ethan mentally filed away every detail, just as he did with contracts and proposals, and resolved to wait. He had no alternative. Meanwhile, the development group could not simply halt. There were signed contracts, ongoing projects, deadlines that sifted away like fine sand through one's fingers. Ethan convened a board meeting and proposed the most logical solution, delegating daily management to 2 trusted individuals. Victoria Caldwell, his fiancée of 2 years, would oversee strategy, investor relations, and public image. She possessed the ideal profile. An MBA from the Kellogg School of Management, with a background in international consulting, endowed with an eloquence that captivated audiences and a cool beauty that impressed photographers. Dominic Thorne, Ethan's cousin and director of operations for 5 years, would manage the construction sites, the spreadsheets, the suppliers. Dominic knew every contractor in Chicago, knew where to procure the best loads of brick, who delivered cement at the lowest cost, how to negotiate with unions. He was efficient, objective, respected by the site foreman. The board approved. The transition would be temporary, until Ethan recovered. Monthly reports would be presented, everything documented, entirely transparent. Yet, as they signed the papers, Ethan felt an unease he could not quite name. It was as if something were out of place, a piece dislodged in a puzzle he could no longer perceive. The penthouse demanded a new order. The nurses, attending thrice weekly to monitor glucose, administer insulin, and check blood pressure, necessitated stringent routines. Medications adhered to schedules, meals required precise carbohydrate control, and medical appointments proliferated. The long-serving housekeeper, a woman in her 60s who had been with the estate since before Ethan inherited it, tendered her resignation. She articulated an inability to contend with such extensive changes, expressing a preference for tending to her grandchildren in Rockford, Illinois. It was Victoria who put forward Sophia Davis's name. An acquaintance of Victoria's mother had provided the recommendation. Sophia, who previously worked cleaning shifts at a community college in Pilsen, possessed administrative assistant experience from a construction material depot in Bridgeport. The reference commended her as organized, discreet, and punctual. Crucially, she was in dire need of employment. She was 32, with dark brown hair secured in a low chignon, and light olive skin that acquired a golden hue under the afternoon sun. Her brown eyes conveyed a profound perceptiveness, seemingly capable of discerning individuals as one would an open manuscript. Her attire comprised a simple beige dress and white nursing shoes that produced a soft, rhythmic sound against the hardwood floors. Ethan became acquainted with her through her voice. Preceding any other sensory input, it was a clear, unhurried cadence, enunciating each word with careful precision. She did not speak loudly, nor did she merely whisper. She simply spoke, and Ethan found himself appreciating the measured calm of that voice as it explained the location of his medications, the nurse's expected arrival time, or the composition of his midday meal. Sophia meticulously processed the procurement lists that Dominic dispatched from Thorne Development Group, requisitions for construction sites, budget allocations, vendor orders, organizing them into a systematic array of colored folders. Blue denoted urgency, green signified routine matters, and yellow indicated items for review. She labeled jars within the pantry, affixed Braille notes she had painstakingly learned to produce by watching YouTube tutorials late at night. After Caleb had fallen asleep, everything was logged in her blue notebook: medication schedules, critical phone calls, messages from the nursing staff. And she observed things: minor details, recurrent inefficiencies, excess materials that languished at work sites, decaying in poorly managed storerooms, safety equipment that disappeared without rigorous inventory control, suppliers who levied exorbitant charges, often double the market rate, by virtue of their localized monopolies within specific urban sectors. Sophia perceived these systemic flaws within the documentation that passed through her hands, in the fragmented conversations she overheard between Dominic and his foreman, and within the invoices she diligently filed. And, her way, she began to note, not for display, but because it made sense, in her blue notebook. Amidst grocery and medication schedules, simple ideas arose. Standardize helmet and safety belt storage to prevent loss. Create pre-pour checklists. Photograph stockrooms weekly for lot control. Negotiate with local suppliers, not middlemen. Thorne Development Group maintained, since Ethan's father, an internal portal, the Groundwork Innovations Portal. A simple platform for any employee, from bricklayer to engineer, to submit improvement suggestions. In practice, almost unused. Workers feared retaliation, foremen lacked time, and engineers assumed they knew everything. Sophia found the portal by chance, via an email to the house requesting system feedback. She read instructions, studied its function. One night, after Caleb slept on the couch watching cartoons, she tried. Carefully, she typed the first suggestion, a safety checklist before concrete pours, with simple items she'd seen ignored in accident reports arriving at the house. Sent. And forgot. 2 weeks later, at a board meeting, Victoria presented a safety process improvement proposal. It was Sophia's checklist, word for word, but signed as an executive director's initiative. The board approved. The press praised. The Chicago Business Journal published an article calling Victoria the executive who brought human sensitivity to civil construction. Sophia read the article awaiting the bus on Michigan Avenue, returning from her mother's medical appointment. She recognized every word, every comma. Even her small typo, swapping concrete pour for concrete pour, was there, corrected. A strange feeling stirred in her chest, a mix of anger and resignation. But what could she do? She was a housekeeper. Victoria was the owner's fiancée. Who would believe her? She decided it did not matter. If ideas were implemented, if accidents decreased, if workers became safer, credit was secondary. Sophia continued sending suggestions: equipment standardization, supplier rotation, photographic audits. Each idea, simple and practical, came from silent observation of one who saw documents circulate through the house like blood in the veins of a sick body. And Victoria continued to sign. She presented proposals in meetings, captivated investors, and earned management awards. Building upon Sophia's work, she forged a reputation that gleamed in the Chicago Business Journal and at entrepreneurial events. The board applauded, the press celebrated, and Sophia, in the quiet solitude of the River North penthouse, noted the next idea in her blue notebook. Ethan, for his part, lived in a world of sounds and textures. He heard Victoria speaking on the phone with investors, her voice consistently firm and confident. He heard Dominic issuing orders to the site managers, his tone invariably curt and impatient. And he heard Sophia, who never raised her voice, never hurried, merely organized the chaos around him with a calm that seemed impossible. One evening, as she prepared the week's medications in separate containers, Ethan inquired about her son. Sophia paused. It was the first time he had asked anything personal. She replied that Caleb was doing well, that he was getting good grades in school, and that he dreamed of becoming an engineer, just like his employer. Ethan smiled, and in that smile, unseen even by himself, there was a tenderness he had not felt in a very long time. Systematic overpricing in affordable housing projects, invoice triangulation, phantom suppliers who billed but never delivered. Money circulated, disappeared, and reappeared in accounts no one audited. Dominic shared the profits with two trusted site managers, men with calloused hands and flexible consciences who understood the game: silence and profit. Thorn Development Group, in those months without Ethan, had transformed into Dominic's territory. He justified the surgical postponements with medical logic. The glycemia was still unstable. Rushing it would be risky. Better to wait a little longer. He spoke with Ethan's private physician, presenting himself as responsible for logistical decisions, and the doctor, busy and trusting, assented. Victoria supported the postponements. She harbored a genuine fear that something might go wrong, that Ethan might worsen, that the company's name might be tarnished by an unsuccessful surgery. And there was, too, the comfort of the position she now occupied. For the first time in her life, Victoria Caldwell wielded genuine power. She was not merely the beautiful fiancée, the event escort. She was the executive, the leader, the woman who made things happen. To lose this, to return to Ethan's shadow, would be akin to losing air itself. The board received formal minutes, clinical justifications, impeccable reports. It trusted them. Ethan, sightless, depended on these voices. Victoria, on the phone, with that confident tone. Dominic, in meetings, with that reassuring objectivity. Dr. Reed, during consultations, with that professorial cadence. All uttered the same directive. Waiting was prudent. And Ethan, weary of argument, weary of his own blindness, acquiesced. Yet an unrest persisted within him. It was an unnamed disquiet, a mental itch that offered no relief. He had known Dominic since childhood, aware of his cousin's ambition, but had always believed ambition possessed boundaries. And Victoria, whom he loved, or believed he loved, seemed altered. Her voice on the phone, when addressing investors, carried an enthusiasm he did not recognize, as if she had discovered something he had never bestowed upon her. Sophia, meanwhile, continued to submit ideas, and she began to suspect, for the suggestions she sent through the Groundwork Innovations portal appeared, weeks later, in Chicago Business Journal articles and board reports, bearing Victoria's name. It was not coincidence, it was theft. But Sophia remained silent. She merely noted in her blue notebook, in minute script, ideas submitted 12. Ideas credited to VC 12. Coincidence? No. Victoria accompanied him to the surgical suite doors. She kissed his forehead, murmuring everything will be fine, and Ethan detected something in her voice he could not name. Relief? Fear? He no longer knew how to read the woman he had, ostensibly, known for years. The procedure lasted 3 hours. When he awakened in the recovery room, bandages covered his eyes, and a dull ache throbbed in his left temple. Reed explained, with his usual grave tone, that everything had proceeded as anticipated. Now, it was a matter of waiting. Visual rehabilitation would span weeks, yet promising chances of significant recovery remained. Ethan returned home 4 days later. He still wore the bandages, yet knew they would soon be removed. He sensed the Chicago air, that characteristic blend of urban exhaust and dampness, and he smiled. He was returning. Slowly, but returning. The penthouse was precisely as he remembered. Sophia had organized everything to ease his arrival. Furniture in the same positions, medications labeled, the refrigerator stocked. She greeted him at the door with her usual clear voice, and Ethan realized he had missed that voice. Not Victoria's voice, which was beautiful but distant. Not Dominic's voice, which was efficient but cold. Sophia's voice, which was simply real. 2 weeks later, the doctor removed the bandages. It was a strange, anticlimactic moment. Ethan had expected an explosion of light, a dramatic revelation. But what emerged was a diffuse clarity, undefined shapes, colors gradually gaining outline. The world returned slowly, like a photograph developing in a darkroom. The first face he clearly saw was Sophia's. She was organizing folders on the living room table, her hair pulled back in its usual bun, her simple beige dress, her brown eyes focused on the colorful labels. Ethan stood in the doorway, merely observing. It was her, the woman whose voice had sustained his days. And for the first time, he could truly see what she did. The folders bore handwritten labels in that careful, rounded script. Blue for urgent, green for routine, yellow for review. The colors were the same he had seen in Victoria's reports, in presentations to the board, in newspaper articles. And it was as if a curtain had drawn back. That organization, that logic, that efficient simplicity, none of it belonged to Victoria. It belonged to Sophia. Ethan said nothing in that moment. He simply returned to his room, retrieved his laptop, and began to do what he had always done when something did not fit: investigate. Next, he opened the reports Victoria had presented to the board. He confronted phrase by phrase. The coincidences were absolute. Not only were the ideas identical, the very wording, complete with minor typographical errors, was reproduced. Victoria had copied everything, word for word, and signed it with her own name. Ethan felt a cold anger, unlike any he had ever experienced. It was not explosive, shouted Wrath. It was something deeper, a disappointment that ached in his chest like a broken rib. Victoria, the woman he had loved, or thought he had loved, had built a reputation on the labor of a housekeeper. And worse, she had done so consciously, month after month, knowing precisely what she was doing. But Ethan was methodical. He would not act on impulse. He needed more information, more proof. He scheduled a meeting with the administrative team to review the portal's workflow. He requested copies of the original attachments for each proposal. He asked for system access logs for the past 6 months. Dominic noticed. It was not difficult to discern that Ethan was personally accessing the systems, asking questions, requesting documents. And Dominic, who had survived years constructing invisible schemes, recognized danger when he saw it. He needed to act swiftly, deflect attention, create a new culprit. The idea arrived with ease, almost self-evident. Sophia had access to the documentation, received material lists, and moved between the household and the developer's information. It would be plausible to accuse her of material diversion. All that was required was to manipulate the records he himself controlled, to plant evidence, to construct a compelling narrative, and so he proceeded. With the assistance of 2 trusted supervisors, he fabricated a false record of material diversion at a low-income housing project on the south side. Electrical cables and sacks of cement were authorized under Sophia's name, complete with digital signatures he himself had entered into the system. The logs appeared legitimate, the ledger complete, the culprit unequivocally clear. When he presented the supposed irregularity to the board, Dominic employed precisely the correct tone, one of grave concern, feigned surprise, and profound disappointment. Regrettably, we have uncovered a systematic diversion. The individual responsible is someone intimately trusted within the household, which renders this situation all the more grievous. He did not utter Sophia's name directly, yet he made her identity unmistakably apparent. The board reacted as anticipated. They demanded immediate suspension, a comprehensive investigation. Victoria, already under considerable pressure from investors who harbored burgeoning suspicions regarding management, readily supported the decision. She articulated the necessity of preserving the company's image, emphasizing that there was no room for leniency regarding such irregularities. And Sophia, who arrived the following day for work as she always did, found a letter of precautionary suspension awaiting her on the kitchen table. Sophia read the letter 3 times, seated on the wooden kitchen chair, her hands trembling so severely she could barely maintain her grip on the paper. Precautionary suspension. Investigation underway. Suspected material diversion. The words themselves were stark, technical, yet their underlying meaning proved utterly devastating. She stood accused of theft. Her world crumbled in mere seconds. It was not simply the immediate loss of her salary, though that prospect alone was catastrophic. It was the indelible stain upon her name, the absolute destruction of her reputation, the sheer impossibility of securing another position in a market that relied implicitly on references. A housekeeper accused of theft would never again be employed in a private home, nor would she ever regain anyone's trust. And then there was Caleb, the boy who harbored dreams of becoming an engineer, who studied late into the night under the dim glow of an old lamp, who trusted his mother as though she were the most unwavering presence in the world. How would Sophia explain that she could no longer afford the tuition for the better school where he had just secured a partial scholarship? How could she articulate that his very future was now imperiled by a baseless accusation? She did not weep immediately. The tears would come later, in the quiet solitude of night, alone in the minuscule bedroom of her apartment in Pilsen. In that precise moment, Sophia did what she had always done in impossible situations. She meticulously organized the facts. She went to her room, opened the old desk drawer from her former job, and took the blue notebook. Everything resided there. Each idea to the Groundwork Innovations portal, hand-noted with date, time, and reasoning. It held sketches, safety-marked blueprints from YouTube videos, supplier lists for freight calculation, and photos from weekend site visits. With Caleb, she documented waste there. Sophia kept everything. It was her way. She never imagined these records would defend her from a criminal charge. She saw them only as honest work, a quiet contribution believing things could improve. She took the notebook, photos, and portal submission proofs. Confirmation emails were always awaited. These went into a clear plastic folder. She requested to speak with Ethan. The secretary, a middle-aged woman with red-framed spectacles, stated he was not receiving visitors. Sophia insisted. She declared it urgent, possessed proof of her innocence, and would not leave without speaking to him. The discomfited secretary called. To their mutual surprise, Ethan authorized it. He received her in his office, a room with dark wood shelving and a large window to the internal garden. His vision was not yet perfect. Object edges shimmered faintly. Colors appeared overly vivid, but he could see. He watched Sophia enter, holding the transparent folder as if carrying something precious and fragile. She wasted no time. Opening the folder, she meticulously spread the documents on the table, her methodical order apparent. She explained, each idea had an origin, a suggestion from real observation, an identified problem, a solution conceived as Caleb slept. Ethan listened, silent, his eyes scanning the papers. He instantly recognized the handwriting. It matched the folder labels, fridge notes, kitchen counter reminders. He also recognized the ideas. Every suggestion Victoria presented to the board was there, in raw form, handwritten weeks before her official presentations. Sophia had more. Photographs. She was pictured on sites during weekends with Caleb, pointing out disorganized storerooms, sun-exposed equipment, materials decaying from unchecked validity. The photos held automatic date timestamps from old cell phones, some dated months prior, predating her submissions. Ethan took the blue notebook, leafing through it slowly. It was like reading a silent war diary. Each page documented an observation, a rationale, a proposal. There were sketches of simple spreadsheets, drawings of warehouse layouts, lists of suppliers with comparative prices, all penned with a standard blue ballpoint, the kind purchased in 10 packs from any drugstore stationery aisle. "Why did you never say anything?" Ethan finally inquired. Sophia took a moment to reply, choosing her words with the same precision she applied to organizing files. "Because I believed it did not matter. If the ideas were saving lives on the construction sites, if accidents were decreasing, the recognition was secondary." "But you knew Victoria was affixing her name to your work." "I did." Sophia's voice held no anger, only weariness. "But what recourse did I have? I am a housekeeper, Mr. Thorne. She is the owner's fiancé, a graduate of an elite university, with her name in prominent magazines. Who would have credited me?" Ethan felt a profound shame. A visceral, burning humiliation that settled in his chest like heartburn. For Sophia was undeniably correct. Had she denounced Victoria, no one would have believed her. They would have attributed it to envy, resentment, an attempt to garner attention. The society Ethan inhabited, that world of dinners in high-end restaurants in Fulton Market, of galas at the Symphony Center, of weekends in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, possessed invisible yet stringent rules. And one of those rules decreed, the underprivileged do not conceive intelligent innovations. If they do, a person of means must have offered assistance. I will resolve this, Ethan stated, his voice imbued with a quality Sophia had never perceived before. Absolute conviction. I will uncover who fabricated these embezzlement records. I will clear your name, and I will ensure that everyone acknowledges the true origin of these ideas. Sophia met his gaze directly for the first time since entering the office. "Thank you," she stated, simply. And within that single word resided a profound gravity that Ethan would carry with him through the ensuing months. After her departure, Ethan remained solitary in his office, observing the garden, where the afternoon light cast long shadows among the leaves of the dwarf apple tree. He then made a definitive decision. He would commission an external audit, comprehensive, without notifying Dominic, without seeking board approval, without consulting Victoria. He would wield the power he still possessed as the majority owner of the development group and expose every concealed ledger that might exist. For now, Ethan truly saw, and what he perceived was not merely the truth regarding the appropriated ideas, it was the truth concerning everything. The audit commenced the following Monday. Ethan engaged a Chicago-based firm specializing in corporate fraud, renowned for its imperviousness to external pressures and its capacity to deliver reports capable of devastating reputations when necessary. The team arrived unannounced, occupied a conference room within the development group's main office in the Loop, and immediately began requisitioning documents. Dominic sensed it on the first day. He attempted to quell the rising panic, but panic, a force unto itself, proved uncontrollable. He contacted his two trusted foremen, demanding they destroy records, purge emails, and make invoices vanish. But it was already too late. The auditors already possessed copies of everything, meticulously stored on external servers, secured by passwords neither Dominic nor Victoria could access. The first findings appeared within a week. Systematic overpricing in affordable housing projects, contracts with phantom suppliers, triangulation of invoices. Funds would vanish from one project, resurface in another, only to disappear again, with a portion invariably finding its way into the pockets of Dominic and his foreman. As for the material embezzlement that had incriminated Sophia, the auditors required merely 2 days to dismantle the. Ethan convened an extraordinary board meeting. Dominic attended outwardly confident. He genuinely believed he could, as always, control the narrative, elucidate the figures, and justify the observed discrepancies. Yet, as the auditors commenced their presentation, enormous projections on the boardroom wall displaying crimson graphs that charted the company's funds draining through the invisible conduits of corruption, Dominic's countenance visibly paled. The board voted unanimously, immediate dismissal. Dominic attempted to argue, insisting there were misunderstandings, that he could explain everything, but the room had already ceased to hear him. The board members, an assembly of impeccably dressed men and women with distinguished gray hair, regarded him with the chilling detachment reserved for those who betray the deepest trust. Victoria was present at the meeting, seated beside Ethan. Her hands remained clasped over the mahogany table, her posture rigidly composed, her face a carefully cultivated mask of neutrality. But Ethan discerned the fear. He perceived it in the subtle tremor of her hands, in the way her gaze meticulously avoided the incriminating graphs, in the barely perceptible acceleration of her breathing. For Victoria knew, she understood with a chilling certainty, that if the auditors were to investigate the theft of intellectual credit with the same rigorous depth applied to the material embezzlement, Her name would inevitably be the next to be tarnished. Ethan Thorne did not wait for the auditors to reach the stolen ideas. He himself presented the case to the board at the following meeting. He brought Sophia's blue notebook, the photographs, the submission confirmations to the Groundwork Innovations portal, and placed everything beside the reports Victoria Caldwell had signed. He made a simple, objective presentation, devoid of dramatic accusations. He merely laid out the facts, side by side, allowing the board to draw its own conclusions. It was not difficult. The board chair, a woman of 60, who had built a career as a civil engineer in an era when women scarcely stepped onto construction sites, looked at Victoria with a disappointment that was painful to witness. "You built a reputation on lies," she stated, her voice low yet incisive. "And worse, you stole the labor of a woman who had no voice to defend herself." Victoria attempted to argue. She claimed she had not stolen, that she had merely compiled ideas that were circulating, that her role had been to give form to the suggestions. But the board did not accept it, for the evidence was clear. A literal copy, word for word, down to the typographical errors. Ethan, observing the scene, felt something peculiar. It was neither satisfaction nor anger. It was an emptiness, an absence of feeling that was worse than any intense emotion. For he realized he had never truly known Victoria. He had loved an idea of her, a projection of what he wanted her to be. And the real woman, sitting there attempting to justify the unjustifiable, was a stranger. That night, Victoria appeared at the penthouse in River North. Ethan was on the terrace, seated on a wooden chair, gazing at the sky where the first stars began to emerge, despite Chicago's light pollution. "We need to talk," she said. Ethan did not respond. He merely waited. Victoria sat beside him, and for the first time in months, she appeared genuine. Without perfect makeup, without the designer suit, without the confident executive posture. Merely a woman, tired, frightened, lost. "I will break off the engagement," she stated, her voice trembling. "Not because you asked, but because I need to. I need to rebuild my life far from here, far from this mess I myself created." Ethan nodded. "You will face consequences. The board will reveal the truth about the ideas. Your name will be tarnished." "I know." Victoria looked at her own hands, her well-manicured nails, her trembling fingers. "But perhaps that is what I deserve. I spent years wanting to be seen, wanting to have power, wanting to prove I was more than just the beautiful fiancé. And when I had the chance to do it the right way, I chose the shortcut." "Why?" Ethan asked, genuinely curious. "Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you say the ideas were Sophia's and that you wanted to help implement them? I would have supported it. The board would have applauded. You would have gained credit for recognizing talent." Victoria delayed her reply. When she spoke, her voice was a near whisper. "Because I fear inadequacy. If I had credited a housekeeper for the ideas, everyone would deem me valueless, a mere conduit. I needed to be the originator, the creator, the significant one." Ethan understood. He too had once felt it. The fear of inadequacy, of being merely an heir, the founder's son, a man who had built nothing with his own hands. "Go," he said softly. "Rebuild your life, learn from this, but go." Victoria rose. Before leaving, she turned. "Sophia is special. Do not let her escape." And she disappeared into the corridor, taking with her the last vestiges of a love that perhaps had never truly existed. The comprehensive audit took 3 months. The results were devastating. Dominic had not only embezzled money, he had also endangered workers' lives by authorizing cuts to safety equipment, by using second-rate materials in community development projects, by paying bribes to inspectors to feign ignorance of irregularities. The Chicago Police Department, alongside the FBI, launched an investigation. Dominic was indicted for fraud, embezzlement, racketeering, and other crimes Ethan had not even known existed. The two project managers, in exchange for a plea bargain, disclosed everything: false contracts, offshore bank accounts, the complete scheme. Thorn Development Group, which had taken 3 generations to build a solid reputation, saw its name in the Chicago Business Journal for the worst reasons. But Ethan decided to face it. He hired a communication team that did not mask the truth, but merely presented it with clarity. He publicly assumed responsibility for the errors, announced reparations, and promised structural changes. And the first change was to publicly recognize Sophia Davis as the author of the ideas that had saved lives and reduced costs. The announcement was made at a press conference in the company auditorium. Ethan, with Sophia beside him, presented the blue notebook, the photographs, the supporting documents. He hid nothing. He told the complete story: how Sophia had sent the ideas through the Groundwork Innovations portal, how Victoria had stolen them, how the board had been misled. Journalists asked difficult questions. How could this have happened? Why did no one notice? Where were the internal controls? Ethan responded with honesty. We failed. I failed. I trusted the wrong people. I did not ask the right questions. I did not look in the places I should have looked. And an integral woman almost paid the price for my mistakes. Sophia, seated next to him, did not say much. She merely confirmed the story when asked, showed the notebook when requested, and in the end, made a request. I want other employees to be able to submit ideas without fear. I want the name of the one who thinks to be the name that appears. That is all. The repercussions were immediate. The Chicago Business Journal lauded transparency. Investors, initially unnerved, saw in Ethan's stance strong leadership. Thorn Development Group workers, for the first time in years, felt their voices heard. Ethan created a new role: coordinator of groundwork process and innovation. He offered it to Sophia. Not a favor, but recognition. Salary was fair, position respected, responsibilities clear, structuring a public credit suggestion program, training employees to submit ideas, forming a committee to evaluate and implement proposals. Sophia accepted, but with conditions. I want laborers participating in decisions. I want masons, general workers, electricians to have equal voice as engineers. And I want credit always public, always transparent. Ethan agreed. Thus was born the new Groundwork Innovations portal, no longer forgotten, but the pulsating heart of the development group. 6 months later, life in the River North penthouse had a different rhythm. No longer lavish receptions or investor dinners until dawn. Instead, something better emerged. Simple dinners with the Groundwork Innovations portal coordination team. Garden meetings where awarded construction workers shared stories. Encounters where Ethan listened more than he spoke. Sophia worked Monday, Friday at Thorn Development's office. Saturdays, she still frequented the penthouse. Not obligation, but choice. For there, in that space once Ethan's solitary, fearful territory, something unexpected bloomed. A bond defying simple definition. Ethan had fallen in love. Not suddenly, not with typical romantic film impetus, but gradually, realizing that when Sophia was near, the world made more sense. He loved how she organized files, the calm with which she explained complex ideas to workers who barely read, the laughter that escaped when Caleb told bad jokes at dinner. Sophia, who had spent years building walls around her heart to protect Caleb, and herself, noticed them crumbling. Ethan saw her, not an employee, nor subordinate, nor inferior. He saw the complete woman, intelligent, strong, vulnerable, courageous. They did not rush anything, for both had learned that haste often leads to errors. Caleb received a full scholarship to a community college for engineering, part of the educational fund the board created for children of employees who contributed improvements. He studied with dedication of one who knows opportunities are rare and precious. Dominic was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Victoria did not face criminal prosecution. Her Chicago career concluded. She relocated to a major East Coast city, restarting at a smaller consultancy. According to Ethan, she worked honestly for the first time. The Groundwork Innovations portal became a national benchmark. Other development groups replicated the model. Universities studied the case, and at the heart of it all was Sophia, with her blue notebook and her simple belief that ordinary people possessed extraordinary ideas. One evening, Ethan and Sophia were in the garden, seated on the same wooden chair where he had been when Victoria announced the end of their engagement. The Chicago sky, rarely generous in its celestial display, offered a sparse scattering of stars amidst the urban haze. "You know that I love you?" Ethan asked without preamble. Sophia turned her face towards him. She smiled. "I know. And you? Do you love me?" "I am starting to," Sophia replied, honest as always. "But I need time. I need to be certain that this is not gratitude, not dependence, not convenience." Ethan nodded. "I will wait. I waited months to regain my sight. I can wait as long as you need." And he waited. For the man who had lost his sight had learned to truly see. He saw that leadership was not control, but listening. He saw that power was not possession, but responsibility. He saw that love was not ownership, but a daily choice to stand beside someone who challenged him to be better. Thorn Development Group continued to thrive, not by the structures it erected, but by the lives it respected. The Groundwork Innovations portal saved not merely costs, but dignities. And Sophia Davis, the woman who saw what no one else did, had taught an entire company that the finest solutions emanate from those who intimately understand the problems. Caleb would become an engineer years later, would work for the same development group, and would implement ideas that honored his mother's legacy. Ethan and Sophia would marry in a simple ceremony, attended only by close friends and workers who wept with emotion upon seeing the coordinator walk down the aisle. But that would be the future. In the present, they simply sat in the garden, gazing at Chicago's rare stars, gradually constructing that which no audit could measure: true trust. And when Sophia finally said, "I love you," months later, Ethan knew it had been worth the wait.